Roxy, you and I should just do a quick introduction. I'm Mark Porter. I'm the CTO of DBT Labs. I have done an awful lot of things in my career at Oracle and MongoDB and GrabTaxi and AWS. And many of you have probably used my products, and I am both proud and sorry for where I let you down whenever I let you down. Roxy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Roxy Dalkey. I am a product manager here at DBT Labs. I focus right now on our metadata platform and DBT Explorer.
It's exciting. And how long have you been with DBT, Roxy?
I've been with DBT for a little over 2 years.
And what's the secret of how you joined?
Yes, I joined through the acquisition of Transform, which was a company focused on building a semantic layer.
Which we still have today. So that's awesome. Okay, team, I think we're probably ready to kick off. I see we just passed 100, so I think that's a great number to kick off. I am going to kind of schedule this so we last about 30, 35 minutes. We can absolutely go longer. We have half an hour. I mean, we have a full hour. That being said, I don't think I'm actually that interesting. So let's just see how things go and let's have fun. So, Roxy, it looks like it's jumping to slide 6, but I can just lead in with what we're going to talk about today. Is we're going to talk about the analytics development lifecycle, which is a way of thinking about analytics in this incredibly important part of the industry. We're going to talk about how DBT Cloud embraces the analytics lifecycle by offering some pieces in it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of an experiment. We were going to do pre-submitted questions and then live questions. And what we've decided to do is instead, we're just going to alternate between some of the pre-submitted questions and live questions, and you're going to get to see the experiment in progress. So Roxy, how about next slide? Okay, so this is what our boss said recently. The analytics development lifecycle is the best path to building a mature analytics practice within an organization of any size. And one of the things that we are focused on, our mission here, is to empower data practitioners to provide great data and information and to actually change the directions of their company through that. The analytics development lifecycle is a way of doing that where companies can talk to each other using the same language. We can think about a set of tools using the same language. And let's talk about why that's important. Next slide, please. And so we do this survey every year, and this is the results of last year's survey. And one thing that's actually kind of fun on this slide is when we founded DBT in 2016, building data transformations and discovering already available data products were huge as problems people were encountering. And we're actually kind of proud to see that those problems have gone down. And while that happened, constraints on compute resources went down with the launch of products like Athena. We launched on Redshift. With the launch of products like Athena and Snowflake and Databricks and all these products, now data practitioners can do what they really want to do. But what are the big problems? Well, some of the big problems that people are facing this year is that they have ambiguous data ownership. They don't know exactly who owns the data. Yeah, they can get at it. And they don't know exactly whether their stakeholders know much about the data. And they don't know about their data quality. Now, when I was running OLTP databases, data quality is whether the bank balance is right. And that's one kind of data quality. But when you're running analytics, there's a whole different kind of data quality that really, really matters. And that's the freshness of the data. That's what source the data came from. That's who processed the data last and did the processing work. In other words, you can't go present a dashboard to your CEO at 9 a.m. every Monday and have them ask a question about this data seems wrong. Where did it come from? And you're like, I don't know, the database. And so data quality has gone to a whole new level of importance. And so let's talk a little bit about the ADLC and how it solves these problems. So the ADLC comes from a time when people used to have SQL scripts. And I'll give you a little personal story. I used to do analytics for a very small company. We had about 350,000 users. And we had 8 MySQL databases that I did all the analytics on. And I literally had one file in Vim that was 38,000 lines long. And what I would do every day is I would cut and paste parts of that SQL script into the various MySQL databases to do our analytics. You can guess how well that worked, not well. And so what DBT did is we brought this concept of software development to analytics. And so you develop your data and your transformations, just like you used to develop software. You test, you do things. For those of you who are new to DBT, you can actually test your transformations before they get put into production and either make a dashboard dead or make a dashboard have wrong answers. And you then deploy out to production and you operate those systems and you make sure that your data warehouses operate and you observe those systems. And then here's the other thing that everyone wants to do, which is they want to discover facts. And by definition, once you discover facts, you're never actually done, because all questions lead to is more questions. And so you analyze those facts and then you plan and you develop. And that's why it's the Circle 8. And if you look at like GitLab's SDLC, you'll see exactly the same thing with 8 different cycles. Next slide, please. And so the analytics development lifecycle is actually completely vendor agnostic. Like you could imagine, I'd be talking to you and we might not have any products that satisfy the needs of the development lifecycle, or we might have 8 that satisfy all 8 boxes. Well, it turns out that we have some, and we hope that people partner for others. We don't believe that we can solve all the problems. And so let's look at how things developed. Next slide, please. I mean, first, we started with SQL and Python transformations, and that's all we did. And so you could write these transformations, you could monitor them. But for those of you who don't know DBT, it changed from Mark owning the SQL script to everybody in the company who dealt with analytics could see and share and modify and check in and test the SQL script. And that was one of the key innovations of DBT. And so the other thing we could do is when you went, oh crap, I broke the CEO's dashboard, or I broke our revenue, or I broke our fraud system, you could roll back. So that was what DBT started with. Next slide. And then we added this concept of orchestration, where we ran all your jobs for you, where we saw if the jobs were working, where we saw if the jobs were taking longer and longer. And then, to make a very, very long story that currently involves 580 people short, next slide, please, we added all these other things. We added the semantic layer so that you can ask much more detailed questions of your data. And for those of you who don't know what the semantic layer is, I'm just going to give a very simple example. Rather than every team defining what their fiscal year is, maybe you just define one semantic, which is the fiscal year and the fiscal quarters of your company. And you can actually just say, using this semantic, group all my data by this. Because what often happens at companies is every team has a different definition of active users or what this fiscal year is. So we did that. We added metadata. How fresh is your data? Where did it come from? Who last used it? We added just recently Visual Editor. We've now added, and this right column gets pretty exciting, AI Copilot, where you can say, please query my data warehouse to get this data and build a DBT model that does this. And we just talked about that on 319, our launch event. We also, surprisingly, were too good at what we did. And enterprises came along, and if you think about a single SQL statement or 2 or 3 SQL statements as one transformation and one node in the DAG of a company, we have companies who have 100,000 nodes in their DAG, and that's just totally unworkable. So we launched Mesh, where each department can have their own directed acyclic graph, and they can make data contracts with other parts of the company. That's what Mesh is. We're also focusing on optimizing costs. We also are launching Iceberg support. Maybe that's going to come up in some of the questions. We think that Iceberg is a game changer for the data industry. And we also launched Advanced CI, where you can learn more about what's going on with your data. And I'm going to hit a slide a little bit later about this SQL comprehension box. But so what does the product that DBT owns today? Next slide. The product that DBT owns today has expanded out of transformation. We have not expanded into ingestion. There's lots of tools that do that well. And we've not expanded into AI and BI analytics. Though what we've done is we connect really well with ingestion systems and with AI and BI analytics systems like Tableau, Power BI, Looker, all those systems that you're familiar with. And there's some really stuff we can get into in the questions. But what we've done is we've expanded out into a complete orchestration system, a complete observability system, so that when those data warehouses are burning all their compute overnight, you know what they're doing and whether it worked. We've expanded out into catalog, and there'll be more on that soon, and we've expanded out into semantics. So this is how we are addressing various parts of the ADLC. And so now is a fun slide. Next slide. We did this crazy thing. We acquired this company called SDF back on December 30th, and we integrated the team at SDF into our company. And what does SDF give us? Historically, DBT used to just parse SQL in a very kind of simple way. We'd look for operators, we'd look for select statements, we'd look for things. We'd kind of do text parsing. But SDF, which we are integrating now, and we showed a preview of on the 19th last week at our Developer Day showcase, actually understands the SQL completely. And I mean understands it where it understands the syntax. So in DBT today, if you type the character select wrong, we will merrily go and send that off to the warehouse, spin up a warehouse for 30 seconds, come back and say you spelled select wrong. Those days are over. With SDF, we will catch all of your syntax errors in whatever dialogue you're using, launching first with Snowflake, and we will actually help you fix them right there in the editor. But there's more. We actually understand all the columns. We go out really quickly and we query the data dictionary of your warehouse. And if you say select star from, or select, x.column name or x.field name from a table or a column that doesn't exist, we'll just highlight it in the editor right there. And so this is something which is basically going to fundamentally change the way developers work with DBT. So you can see on the slides that first, orders of magnitude, faster developer experience. Second, not only are we not going to go to the warehouse for things that like testing and like syntax verification and column verification, that's pretty obvious and pretty cool. We're not going to go to the warehouse if you don't need to rebuild that model. So we expect a significant reduction in costs. And by the way, we're still figuring out what that is. Stay tuned. We just had these guys and ladies join our company 86 days ago. So we're still figuring out, but we expect a significant reduction in warehouse cost, along with a significant increase in the speed with which developers can work. And not only that, coming down the pike later this year, still haven't figured out when, we are going to be able to trace the lineage of what happened in your DAG throughout the entire DAG much more concretely. Now, why is this important? I saw a lot of you join from EU countries, like I saw someone join from Limassol, Cyprus, where I was about a month ago. And any place that has GDPR-like or AI model-like rules, you have to be able to tell your government, if asked, where every piece of data that you present or that you use comes from. And so you're going to see so much PII and PHI, which is private health information, features coming out later this year. And we're really excited. So with that, I said I'd be done in 12 or 13 minutes. I think I was 14 minutes. Sorry about that. I would love to transition to either pre-questions or if there are questions that have been asked live. Roxy is going to be my MC.
Yes, excellent. And just a quick plug for our launch showcase on May 28th. You can register today. There's a slide up here. We're very excited about that. You can learn more about what we've been working on. All right. Thank you, folks, for submitting questions. We're going to alternate between some pre-submitted questions as well as the live questions that you all have been submitting. Keep sending those in. So Mark, Tristan recently posted a roundup about how AI will disrupt the role of data engineering. So I'm curious, how have you seen AI augment the work of your engineering org, and what are you most looking forward to in the coming years?
So So Tristan's blog is on the data analytics chat, and I don't know if we can put like the link to that Substack somewhere in here. Jason Gans also, who's joining us today, also posted a really interesting thing. So there's a couple things going on here. Number one, I run a group of software engineers, not a group of data analytics engineers. So I have to answer this question twice. For my software engineers, AI is changing how they code. It's changing how they document. It's changing how they debug. It's changing how they look at bugs. It's changing in many, many, many ways. It's also for my product team and my design team, it's changing how they do research. They do these deep research sites or they use chat PRD and they get a great draft of a PRD in minutes rather than days. So it's changing so much about how traditional organizations that produce software work. But it's also changing how teams that produce data products work. It's changing how they produce models with our Copilot. It's changing how they talk to their data. A phrase that I'm not that wild about, but I think is going to become more and more real over time. And with agentic AI in particular over the next 6 months, I think you're going to see some incredible things happen where data analysts actually talk to their data a little bit more rather than doing so much legwork. So what's the summary? There's all this hype in the world about everyone losing their jobs. And my son is in the industry, and he says it best, and I'm going to give him credit. He says, Dad, AI is going to let us do the jobs that the rest of the business always wanted us to do at the speed, at the quality, at the intensity, and with the iteration speed that they always wanted us to do. And so I think about it a little bit differently. I think back in the 60s, computers could do this much and people wanted us to do this much. And then in the 80s, computers could do this much and people want us to do this much. We are still, even with AI, not even close to computers being able to do the things that people want them to do. And so as long as that band gap exists of human ingenuity, of human cleverness, of human directed creativity, I don't think anyone has to worry about their jobs.
Yeah, that's I like how you talk about how, the people aspect is still really important. Like that's not going away, but there'll just be ways to do things more efficiently and better. So, all right, we'll take one of the live questions here. So this is a question from Chris W. It says, how can we best help as customers to push other vendors to better integrate and partner with DBT?
Ooh, I like you, Chris. So we have a lot of ways you can give feedback to DBT, and we could probably talk about that a little bit more, all the different channels we have. But we read every single thing that comes in. And one of the things that we're actually doing, I want to be candid, we're a small company growing fast, is we are actually probably going to spin up a partner integration engineering and product team this year. To date, I want to be candid and vulnerable. We have fit a lot of our partner integrations into teams' backlogs rather than having a team that is deeply dedicated to this. And so that is something we're going to be doing. And I would just advise you to reach out to DBT, find Roxy, find Jason Gans, find people, and just ask about the integrations. And we will go do research into all those integrations. We are still small enough to move fast and be nimble.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to go back to one of the pre-submitted questions. Mark, you've seen quite a few trends and waves in tech over the course of your career. What about the AI wave feels similar or different to previous waves? And what's your advice on how organizations can best adapt?
So this was a pre-submitted question, so I got to see it ahead of time. So if this sounds like a rehearsed answer, it actually is. If you think about other disruptive shifts like on-premises to cloud or databases to data warehouses, and finally doing things not in MySQL databases, Mark, that is not where I should have been doing analytics. The trends were much slower. They were 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and they were actually less disruptive. So AI is a completely disruptive shift. But let's first talk about other disruptive shifts. I've never been a fan of cryptocurrency. I still don't buy products with cryptocurrency. Sure, it's a speculative instrument, but it could come crashing down tomorrow. There's nothing holding it up. And by the way, who buys pictures of monkeys and calls them EFTs and says they're valuable anymore? I mean, that was this weird hype phase that happened and then disappeared. And how much of your day is actually affected by quantum computing? Pretty much zero. And quantum computing was going to destroy cryptography, and now pretty much everyone on the planet uses quantum resistant ciphers. And so all of these things are overhyped. Now, why am I so dismissive? Because as a technology company, we really, really, really have to dig in to which is overhyped and which isn't. So let me give you an example of one we haven't talked about on this call: agents. Did anyone actually think that computers were going to formulate English questions to each other as ways to communicate and get things done? I mean, that was silly. It wasn't like one computer was going to say, "Hey, Joe, can you tell me about revenue last week?" And so now with agents and protocols like MCP, we think we are going to see an absolute explosion of data talking to data and computers talking to computers and analysts being able to ask different questions. So AI is different. But I also want to unhype AI a little bit. When I was at Grab, I had 1,700 people reporting to me in my engineering team, and 150 of them were AI engineers. And we built models for everything. We built models for weather. We built models for driving. We built models for pricing. We built models for safety. And this was all using completely traditional models. And I think that you will find that most companies today are using traditional models. So the thing I want to say is, how can businesses adapt? I mean, the very first thing I would say is lean into every traditional model. They are incredibly valuable. You don't need to use LLMs. You don't need to have a huge bill with your favorite LLM company. Build models, fine-tune models, work on models. The second thing I would say is that most companies are having a lot of trouble adopting generative AI. Start with support. Start with summarizing tickets. Start with using Notion summaries. Start getting familiar. I mean, to be really clear, I think there's an AI chatbot on every single customer service site I go to, and I have not yet had one answer my question correctly and not had to escalate to a human. So I think we're pretty early days there. So the final thing I'll say on this topic is AI doesn't know its data better than anyone on X or Twitter or any place else does today. And so the quality of data is really, really important. And where the data comes from and whether it's a reputable source that you believe in, whatever you believe. And so one of the things that we're going to see is AI systems do two things. Number one, be able to trace data. That's great. But number two, we're going to start seeing AI systems actually start grading data for how well governed it is and where it came from. And I think that is going to be game changing. Long answer to a short question. I'm sorry.
No, very insightful. Thank you. All right, switching over to a question from the live feed. I'm a little biased about this one because I've been thinking about this one a lot. Mark, what do you think are some of the important features for a full data catalog?
Oh, you are a little biased on this one. So Roxy came in and was the PM for semantic layer, but now is the PM for our catalog. So one of the things, there's this concept sometimes that catalogs are bought and they become shelfware. They're bought as a checkbox. Let's be clear. Most of you on this call, if you have catalogs, you're probably not using them potentially as much as you thought you would. And I have a pretty strong belief that that's because they're not well integrated. Data needs to go into a catalog automatically. And then your catalog needs to talk to you. Your catalog needs to say, this has become less trustworthy. This data has changed shape. This data is different than it was before. Just like if I had Roxy looking at every node of our DAG at DBT, which is like 15,000 nodes, Roxy would have comments on what was going on in the DAG. So I think those are really, really important questions. But Roxy, since you're the PM of the catalog, what do you want to add?
Yeah, I think the key to this is way more integrations and way more metadata. That's probably the first step. So not just showing things that are in DBT, which is historically what our catalog has done, but bringing in other parts of the ecosystem. And that's not just from the warehouse, that's downstream integrations, everything in between, the Fivetrains of the world, the streaming tools, giving users that are doing discovery really the full picture about what's in their data ecosystem. And then I think, to your point, there's a lot of collaboration features that we want to include as well to allow people to ask questions and really kind of foster that democratization and understanding of what's there. I would say that those are probably the biggest things we're focused on, the metadata side and the collaboration side.
So I have two features I want to talk about, one existing and one future, that in my conversations with customers, I've hit a 0% hit rate that they know about that we offer. One is called active exposures. So if you work with our catalog and our system and you let us talk to your Tableau system, let's just use that as an example, we will know which dashboards are looked at when. And so we can tell you, should you really be updating this every 15 minutes when it's looked at Monday at 9? Maybe that's a really poor use of your warehouse spend. Or maybe you're updating this thing once a day and it's looked at throughout the day. Maybe that's not a good thing to do either. So that's called active exposures. We also, in the future, are going to have active sources where we really track how your data is coming in, when it's loaded, how much is loaded, and that's going to affect how we actually process your DAG. So those are all sorts of exciting things going on in the catalog space. And thank you for being self-promotional there, Roxy.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, pivoting back to one of the pre-submitted questions here. So, and talking a little bit more about the developer experience side. So at DBT, obviously, we've always believe that treating data like software pretty much unlocks a new level of impact for data teams. But as the ecosystem matures and as technology evolves, like a great developer experience, the definition of that is also evolving too. So when you think about enabling developers to be the most effective, what are the key ingredients that you think matter the most?
So I do have to be candid here and say I've never been a data practitioner. It's something I need to do. But as I've watched people and watched videos and learned over the last year, so I'm a little bit behind in my CTO job, I think that the speediness of the interface, like how fast you get a result back, how fast you can play with things. Can I test this data with a seed? Can I, submit my job as a test job and have it just run? I think that's really important. That's a huge part of the data experience. Another part of the data experience, which frankly, Roxy, I think we could improve on, is notifications, async notifications about how things are going. Did these jobs run last night? Did they not run last night? I think that's an area of improvement for us. So that basically the data developer is more on top of what is going on in their warehouse than anyone else at the company. There's nothing worse than getting a message from someone else who consumes your product going, hey, did you know this product is not working quite right today? And so I think that kind of live awareness is really important. I also believe that, I'm going to be candid here. I also believe that most data people are frustrated when we talk about lineage and governance because they don't have tools that let them very easily see where the data comes from in a way that is meaningful and what might have changed in that data. So when they are asked in a meeting or asked to write a document that says, how reliable is this data? I think we have a lot to do at DBT to really give them really concise answers about the trust in the data and where the data came from. And a lot of that's coming out. I mean, I am teasing a lot of stuff coming out over the next 3 to 6 months. So those are the things I think are important. Oh, one more.
Yeah, that makes.
I think that DBT launched for a very specific persona. And that persona was the data nerd. And that nerd just loves to sit there and write some SQL statements and write some CTEs and get some stuff right and chain them all together and feel proud of themselves. And then that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But over time, more and more people started using DBT who are actually analysts, who are trying to get business insights. So one of the things that you're going to see us doing more and more and more is really catering to a set of workflows that really help analysts have a lower friction, higher analyst type workflow, like DBT Copilot, where you can just say, hey, build me a DBT model. Or how about this? You open up one of the DBT models, which is really complex. And with DBT Copilot, you can actually say, explain what this DBT model does. So that is catering to a person who's more on the business side. And to be clear, but depending on what company you talk to, there's between 5 and 15 times as many analysts at companies as there are data engineers and analytics engineers. And the third type of persona that we are catering to is the data executive, who needs their data to always be accurate, to not use non-governed data in feeding their AI systems and having to retrain their AI systems from scratch, because we all know it's hard to untrain. And the data executive who cares about cost. And so if you think about the person who might have really been pushing for DBT and products in the ADLC in general over the last 5 years, it would have been that analytics engineer or that data engineer who just wanted to get their job done well and better and not get fired because of bad data. Well, now it's a whole nother set of people, analysts and data executives, who we find pushing DBT purchases at companies.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Mark. Okay, so let's go back to one of the questions that was submitted. This is from Eric George, and it's, what is the benefit of creating a semantic model in DBT versus Snowflake?
I'm throwing that right back at you, Roxy.
Okay, that's what I figured.
I have an answer, and I'm going to grade myself on the answer when we're done.
Yes. Okay. So DBT is where you do your transformation and really manage your control plane. So in my mind, the benefit of creating your semantic layer in DBT is that you can sort of be flexible as far as what warehouses you're using. And if you want to switch from one warehouse to another, you actually have the flexibility to do that if you do this in DBT versus the source warehouse.
I would have gotten an A. That was exactly my answer. So good. So I don't lose my job today. Tomorrow's still open. There's a question about VS Code. Could you ask me that one?
Yes. Let me just pull it up here. Where is that one? Just sorting
so
through
it's hey, I attended the DBT developer days. They mentioned about VS Code extension. I totally flamed out on my answer earlier in this call. We are not only building our own IDE, our own CLI, but one of the things we talked about last week was a VS Code extension, because more and more that's where people are spending their day. And what you're going to see over the rest of 2025 is a sharply increasing set of features in our VS Code extension. It's going to be syntax checking. It's going to be data, like I said, columns and tables checking. And stay tuned for a lot more in that area. We are leaning very, very hard into the DBT VS Code extension. And I would love to see in the chat if people think that's a good idea or not. And if you'd rather us lean into some other development environment than VS Code.
That's great. Thanks for finding that one. I couldn't find it quick enough in the chat. Appreciate it. Okay.
And by the way, little story, since people are totally trolling me on Vim. The other day I was making a presentation at a conference and I had to let someone else do my slides on the thing because the clicker wasn't working. And they hated me because even as CTO, I have disabled all the arrow keys on my keyboard and I use Vim key bindings. And they were like, I don't know how to run your slides, which was pretty fun. Okay.
We're gonna,
other questions?
yeah, we're gonna go back to one of the pre-submitted ones. This one is also near and dear to my heart and relates to one of the questions that came in earlier. But How are you prioritizing investment in the DBT semantic layer, and where do you see that product going?
That is a great question. I actually didn't prep for this one, even though it was pre-submitted. So we love the Transform acquisition, and we love semantics. And what we are learning more and more is that what semantics are to humans, semantics are 10x that to AI. So we published a blog post last year, which if I had prepped for the question, I would have the blog post handy, my apologies, where we showed that if you had an LLM talk to and interrogate a semantic layer, the answers were incredibly better, like 2 or 3 times better, I don't have the number, than the answers with the LLM. And even when the answers weren't quite on target, the amount of hallucination went almost to 0. And that's key. So maybe you get a wrong answer, but you don't like hallucinate some fake answer. So that was really key. So one of the things we're doing is we kind of screwed up a little bit, and we didn't integrate the semantic layer as well with DBT the first year as we should have. So we're kind of going back, and we're kind of making the semantic layer feel like a native part of DBT. So you're going to see a lot of that come out over the next 6 months. You know, sometimes we make bad product choices. And that was one where I think we should have made semantics just feel native to the entire DBT experience. The second thing we're doing is we are integrating the semantic layer into all of the right side of the DAG much more aggressively for AI use cases. And you're going to see that happen a lot more as well. So you're going to see us using the semantic layer in a lot more of our own product, but you're also going to see things like the semantic layer much more available via API for use by other products. So we're very excited about the semantic layer. We think that it's going a lot of places, and you're going to see a lot of investment in it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, back to the questions that are being submitted through chat. This one is fun. When will you have an MCP feature?
I think you're all just going to have to sit tight and stay tuned. I just, you know, MCP is, I actually led into this earlier. An LLM using a mixture of experts system that is fine-tuned on your company's data, that then knows what all the APIs are to go ask questions. I mean, come on, that's what's going to happen. Stay tuned.
Yeah, it's exciting. Okay, shifting a little bit over to one of the questions that was pre-submitted. Mark, tell us about how you go about marrying engineering goals with business outcomes.
So I like to share personal stories. I hope it's somewhat useful. My entire career, I've struggled with this. I struggled with it at MongoDB. By the way, I didn't struggle with it at AWS RDS because we literally couldn't roll servers into the data centers fast enough for RDS. I didn't actually have to do much. People used to say, Mark, the service grew from 100 million to 6 billion in 5 years. You know, congratulations. I said, I did nothing but roll servers into data centers. But at other companies, it's really hard to have a self-serve motion and a sales enterprise-led motion where you're trying to create business outcomes for your own company and have engineering and product work with that. And so we're working with that at DBT right now. And there's 2 sides to this question. And the way we do that now at our company is we actually take the roadmap, and Roxy, you haven't seen this yet, but I've been working on it all week, is we take the roadmap and we rephrase it in why the sales team or the PLG, the self-serve users, product-led growth, should give a crap about this thing. Whereas what we used to do is we used to say, here's the feature, figure it out. Now instead, we're talking about the benefit, and then you click through on the URL to see what the feature is that provides that benefit. So that is an internal company way of thinking about marrying engineering goals with business outcomes. There's a whole nother way of thinking about it, which is how do we work backwards from the customer? So this is not my company. This isn't business outcomes for my company. This is business outcomes for all of our customers. And the way we do that is we do surveys. My PMs talk to customers, I think on average 2 to 3 times a week, maybe more. I don't know the actual data there, but a lot. And we constantly learn that we are wrong. And that though we are so smart, it's amazing, we're still not as smart as our customers. And that's humbling sometimes when you go out and you talk to 6 customers and only one of them agreed with the roadmap you'd presented. And so I just can't emphasize enough working backwards from customers. And so Marty Kagan, who is, one of the most revered product leaders of all time, says that if you don't have at least 6 enterprise customers who agree with your roadmap, you shouldn't produce the feature. And we're leaning into that pretty hard. And what Marty found in his research is that if you do that, and if you reach out to your customers relentlessly to find customers who help craft your roadmap, you will have great business outcomes. Now, the final thing I'll say here is that so many people think that engineering is all here just to produce shiny new frickin' things. And I've got to tell you, I have never once in 35 years been on an engineering team who cared more about shiny new technically cool things than they did about delighting customers. And I would love to kill that trope if I could. I think that engineers care about delighting customers. And the only time they focus on shiny new things is when they're not getting good customer feedback and when they're not getting good product feedback. And then they go, I'll go do something cool. So that might have been a little bit controversial, but that is my pretty strongly held belief on that question.
Yeah, that's great. I thought we could wrap the Q&A with a fun question that was actually submitted by our very own Jason Gans, which is, Mark, can you tell us about the time you helped NASA and lasers?
Okay, so Gans posted yesterday. Thank you, Gans, but you got it completely wrong. And you even said you got it wrong, which was funny. So what I did at NASA, Caltech owns NASA and operates JPL, and which is the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena. And as a Caltech student, I mean, this is so cool. If you have any kids, it's amazing. You can literally, as a Caltech student, walk into any lab at JPL, which is 8,000 scientists, and say, I would like to work on your project for free. Just sign my student ID card here. And that's really cool. So I got to work on a project where we were actually mapping Mars from the Goldstone Desert. We would send out about 1 million watts of energy through the Goldstone radar dish, send it to Mars for 20 minutes, turn off the dish and put it in receiving mode and get the bounces back. And over a 2-year period, we mapped the equatorial regions, because obviously you don't get bounces from the poles. We mapped the equatorial regions of Mars down to 1 meter resolution from a radar dish sitting in the desert of California. And that was just stunning and amazing. And I loved that project. It was so cool.
That is very cool. I did not know that until Jason submitted the question. So,
and that is why I have Mark Loves Tech, and I really, really do love tech, any kind of tech. So if you want to see how I love tech, go to marklovestech.com. There's all sorts of crap there. Some of it's curated, some of it's not. But you can go there and see my cultural hints and see how I operate. And you can see other things there too that I find interesting. But I do love tech.
All right. That's very, very exciting, and really appreciate everyone joining today. I think we are going to wrap this up, and just wanted to remind you of a couple of call to actions here. So join us for the 2025 DBT launch showcase. You can register now actually in the docs tab directly in Goldcast, which is right in the same area that you do the chat and Q&A. You should also register for Coalesce 2025, which is in October in Vegas.
And that registration will also be in the docs today.
Ah, did it? Wonderful. Yes. That's
registration
great.
Open today. I just got the notice in my email.
And if you want to learn more about DBT Cloud, there's a DBT Cloud demo button directly here in Goldcast as well. So you can click the orange button on the top right-hand corner. And of course, we want to hear your feedback. Tell us what we could do better, what you liked. there should be a Goldcast survey so you can provide feedback on today's session. We really appreciate everyone engaging. Mark, thank you so much for answering all the questions and all your insightful input here. And we hope to see you all soon.